Cease this charade, refrain from feigning illness and obstructing my path. You are but a homemaker, Matt, my husband, callously dismissing my feeble state as he forcefully shook off my outstretched hand. Ailing and disoriented, I struggled while he callously exited our abode. I had always clung to the belief that marriage entailed mutual support in times of both health and affliction, yet in my moment of need, Matt abandoned me, leaving me stranded. The word despair echoed relentlessly in my thoughts as my consciousness slowly waned. In the midst of my distress, an unexpected savior emerged. My name is Michelle, aged 32. Approximately a year ago, I entered into matrimony with Matt, my peer in age. Since our serendipitous encounter at work, we had cultivated a seemingly ordinary life. Matt, initially understanding of my desire to maintain a professional career post-marriage, had been a companion in our shared domestic responsibilities. However, the illusion of normalcy shattered on that fateful day. My husband was not very adept at housework, so I eventually requested him to handle only the simpler tasks. Initially, he actively contributed to household chores without expressing any displeasure, and our married life seemed content. Then, one day, after experiencing some minor health issues, I visited the doctor and received surprising news. Congratulations, you are just about 7 weeks along. Astonished, I discovered I was pregnant. That day, my husband and I shared our joy, contemplating the forthcoming parenthood. I'm going to be a dad. It's kind of hard to believe, he exclaimed, and we engaged in hopeful conversations about the future. I believed a happy future awaited us. Contrary to my expectations, reality took a different turn. Hey, what about dinner? It's your turn, isn't it? And you haven't cleaned the bathroom either. I'm sorry, I replied. I felt so ill today that I couldn't do anything. I was in a state where breathing was all I could manage, beset by severe morning sickness. Feeling nauseous constantly and barely able to stand, I spent my days lying in bed, unable to go to work, causing me to miss days. Unfortunately, my husband failed to comprehend my suffering and was unforgiving. From my husband's perspective, I seemed like a major slacker, he declared, openly showing his displeasure. Don't get spoiled just because you're pregnant. You expect me to do household chores too, even though I work outside. Can you even be a mother like that? I sometimes wondered how he could utter such things. To my husband, who came home stressed from work, a wife unable to perform household chores must have been an annoyance. Despite contemplating returning to my parents' house until my health improved, I feared it would create an irreversible distance between us. While morning sickness is temporary and should subside in another 2 months, I decided to endure until then. However, my husband's scornful attitude only intensified. Later, as morning sickness subsided, my ill health persisted, leading to repeated hospital admissions. Deciding to take a break from work to avoid risking anything happening to the baby, I thoroughly discussed this with my doctor and employer. Despite my efforts, my husband bitterly complained, "Stop relying on me for everything. It's your responsibility if you can't work or do household chores." He may have been right, but my decisions were all aimed at protecting our unborn child. Why do I have to be spoken to like that? I pondered, enduring my husband's unreasonable behavior. I tried asking about living expenses. My sick pay is quite low. Could you contribute a bit more from your salary? His response was complete silence. Why should I have to pay for you too? He eventually retorted. I started to question whether I could continue with this man. My growing anxiety was snowballing. I had thought that becoming pregnant would lead everything in a positive direction, but somehow everything went awry. The last straw was my mother-in-law, Mary. "Miss Michelle, how are you feeling?" One day Mary called me. She had raised my husband on her own after divorcing when he was in elementary school. An active yet gentle person, she had always been kind to me. However, she advised me to move around a bit during pregnancy, emphasizing the difficulty for Mac to manage household chores while working. "You need to do your part." Hearing this, I felt completely overwhelmed. Mary wasn't a bad person, she's experienced in childbirth, and I understand her point of view. But at that moment, all I could hear was, "Don't be lazy. Do all the housework if you're not working, all the more reason." "Yes, you're right," I responded, though I had considered confiding in Mary about my husband's unfairness. Feeling completely isolated by her lack of understanding, I gave up. "Let me know if you need help." Mary said before hanging up, leaving me with unresolved feelings. And then, the incident happened. I woke up feeling feverish that morning, overwhelmed by a general malaise. An intermittent nausea left me staggering around. I somehow managed to prepare breakfast for my husband. As I lay on the couch, he looked at me with contempt and said, "You don't need to make a show of how hard it is." After my husband left for work, I lay in bed, but my health continued to deteriorate, and it didn't seem like I'd be able to make dinner. Should I order delivery? No, our finances are tight. The living expenses I received from my husband were never enough, and I had been dipping into my savings every month. Moreover, the medical expenses for my upcoming delivery were significant, and I feared we'd run out of money before the baby arrived. I called my husband. "I'm really not feeling well today. I'm sorry, but I can't make dinner. Could you pick something up?" He abruptly hung up, saying, "What are you talking about? You're just a housewife." But I really couldn't move. "I'm too busy for this. If it's shopping, you should do it. Don't make your husband do such things." He left the house after saying that, and I quietly cried. After a while, I heard the door open in a rush. My husband had returned. "Hey, Matt, what about dinner?" "I'm going out for drinks. I'll eat out. I don't need it." At that moment, I was feeling feverish and could barely stand. "I'm really struggling today. I wish you could stay with me," I pleaded. But he shook off my hand, saying, "Stop it. Don't get in my way. You're just a housewife. You're probably just faking it as usual." He left the house after saying that. I didn't have the energy to go back to bed and collapsed at the entrance. "Someone, please help me." I desperately appealed in my mind, but there was no response in the empty house. Then, from afar, I heard a familiar voice. A familiar voice was calling me. In my foggy consciousness, "Stay with me, who is this person?" My consciousness faded at that point. When I woke up, Mary was looking at me with concern and I was in a hospital bed. "Michelle, oh good, you're awake." Apparently, Mary had found me collapsed at home and called an ambulance. "Don't worry, the baby is fine. I'll call the doctor." Mary quickly left the room, wiping her tears. The doctor said I had severe anemia and a seasonal cold, which could have been dangerous for the baby. I had felt feverish, but I was surprised to learn I had a high fever when I was brought to the hospital. But why? "Matt asked me to come and scold you for slacking off in household chores." Mary had come to our house after hearing constant complaints from my husband and found me collapsed at the entrance. "I'm sorry, I was harsh without listening to you." There was another reason for Mary's visit. "I wanted to thank you for this. That red cardigan looks great on you." Last week was Mary's birthday. Since getting married, I've always sent her gifts on Mother's Day and her birthday, feeling the cold more with age, so I chose a cardigan this year. Flashy but with a simple design to keep her feeling youthful. I remembered every word you said, and thank you for sending such a lovely gift. I was wondering if you really were as lazy as my son claimed. I'm so sorry for what happened. Mary apologized, crying, "It's okay. I wanted to talk to you about my husband, but it was hard to say." I cried in front of Mary too. Having her on my side lightened my heart. After we cried for a while, Mary said with burning anger, "That man, my own son, is unforgivable to let his pregnant wife suffer like this." Her lips trembled with anger, and she clenched her handkerchief tightly. "Michelle, what will you do about your relationship with him?" When I honestly shared my thoughts, Mary nodded in agreement. "I'm on your side, always beside you." Emboldened by Mary's supportive words, I made up my mind to take action. After a week in the hospital, I was discharged with Mary accompanying me. My husband hadn't contacted me even once during my stay. At this point, I didn't care anymore. Upon arriving home, I was hit by an appalling stench despite having been gone for only 4 days. "What is that smell? It's like living with a wild animal." Mary's comment almost made me laugh, but I held it in. The odor was indeed unbearable. My husband was sprawled on the living room couch, snoring with drool dripping from his mouth. "Wake up, you foolish son." Startled by Mary's echoing voice, my husband instantly woke up, looking pathetic. "Huh, Mom, what? What have you been doing, leaving the house for days?" He began complaining to me, but Mary shouted back at him, "Michelle was in the hospital. What is this mess? Even a zoo would be cleaner." Mary was right. In just a week, our home had turned into a garbage dump. The sink was filled with empty beer bottles and food scraps. Damp towels and underwear were scattered everywhere, and the floor was sticky as if something had been spilled. It's worse than a zoo. What kind of life have you been living? I muttered, and my husband glared at me. Don't act so high and mighty. It's all because of you. I doubt even a baby would make such a mess. You really can't do anything on your own, can you? I expressed my opinion calmly. After all, it was the truth. Thinking about it, I realized I had been managing cleaning and laundry quite well when I was at home. It never looked like a cage in a zoo, and I never imagined my husband would be such a life-inept chimp. Why did you leave Michelle and go out? Mary's overwhelming presence completely subdued my husband. No matter the age, men are always weak against their mothers, I thought. It's not like that. She was just being childish, saying not to go drinking. Are you saying Michelle, with her high fever and pale face, was faking it? Are you out of your mind? Even the usually calm Mary was scolding him loudly. My husband just glared at me silently. How dare you tell on me? I could almost hear his inner voice accusing me of tattling. Then he muttered resentfully, "Don't get cocky. I've been supporting you all this time. In the past, I might have been intimidated by such words from him, but not anymore. I'm no longer that weak. Fine then. I don't need your support anymore. I'm prepared for that. What I'm saying is, I don't need you anymore. What wife would want to be with a grown baby who can't do anything for himself?" I had run out of patience with my husband. His verbal abuse was one thing, unacceptable, but perhaps something we could have worked through with discussion. However, he left me with a high fever and went for a drink, and while his wife is in the hospital, he turns his house into a garbage mansion and is unable to live a normal life as an adult. He was failing as both a husband and a father. "And what really were you doing, suddenly going out drinking with colleagues?" I asked, glaring at him. Then my husband flinched in an amusing way. "That's none of your business." "No, it is my business. I am your mother. I have the right to know." "Tell me the truth," Mary demanded firmly, and my husband started trembling, panicking. "If you won't confess, should I show you the undeniable evidence?" "Evidence, you mean?" His face turned pale at that moment. "Yes, confess now, you're making it worse for yourself." Under relentless questioning, he finally hung his head and admitted, "I'm sorry." In short, he had been having an affair with a female co-worker since I became pregnant, and household chores and his care became difficult. A cliché story found anywhere. "What's her name? Which department? How often did you meet each week?" Mary and I bombarded my husband with questions. I stopped the recording mode on my mobile phone. "All right, confession evidence collected. Thanks for speaking up so honestly." As I smiled, my husband's face hardened again. "You tricked me." "Yes, who would have thought you were actually cheating? Thanks to you, we didn't have to hire a detective. Much appreciated. You deceived me." My husband, filled with frustration, started blaming me for his infidelity. His logic was incomprehensible. "You were just pretending to be sick to get my sympathy, weren't you? It's mutual, not even close." Watching my husband refuse to admit his faults made me feel even more pitiful. Then Mary sighed deeply and murmured, "Selfish, tyrannical, always making excuses. You're just like your father, whom I divorced, you know that, Dad." My husband was shocked by Mary's unexpected words. That's true. He had always hated his father, who divorced Mary when he was in elementary school. His father was notoriously unruly and often caused trouble when drunk. My husband never imagined he'd be compared to him. "I never got drunk and caused a scene." Mary was referring to something else. "Your father also left me alone during my pregnancy to go drinking, remember? Men end up like their fathers. I should have divorced before you were old enough to remember." Mary spoke with a mixture of disdain and sadness. My husband was speechless, frozen, and shocked. "A father who negatively influences his children is better off gone, don't you think, Michelle?" "Yes, not necessary. In fact, should be excluded." After hearing Mary's perfectly valid reason for divorce, my husband, left speechless, was handed the divorce papers by me, but he still clung to us. "Let's rethink this. We're having a child. Cool down, okay?" His pleading tone was like a child begging his mother. "What are you talking about? That stage has long passed. So what should I do now?" As he covered his face in distress, peeking through his fingers, he still had some fight left. Mary delivered the final blow. "Stop it. If you continue to cling to Michelle, I'll cut off your relationship as mother and son. What will you do? Why won't you take my side, Mom? He seemed defeated. Mary remained my ally till the end. Eventually, I divorced my husband in my 7th month of pregnancy. I never expected our relationship to deteriorate with the arrival of our child, but perhaps it was meant to be. Afterward, I returned to my parents' house and gave birth to a healthy boy. My parents were shocked, as they knew nothing until I returned home with a pregnant belly. The lawyer introduced by my father handled the divorce negotiations, and we secured compensation for the mental and financial distress I endured. I also made sure the woman involved paid her share. Post-divorce, my ex-husband repeatedly visited my parents' house, begging to see the child. When are you going to transfer the child support? I retorted sarcastically. We don't need that. We're a family. Best when together, he replied nonsensically. What nonsense? Just fulfill your minimum duty as a father. Even if you were a 0 as a husband, otherwise, you're less than 0 in everything. My husband left with the look of being struck on the head, seemingly depressed. The image of his father must have left a strong impression on him. Rumor has it that he resigned from his company. He ranted to his co-workers about our divorce, insisting it wasn't his fault, but it backfired. Whether he genuinely believed he was blameless or not, his recounting of all the verbal and physical abuse he hurled at me led everyone to despise him. Simultaneously, rumors of his affair with a female colleague spread. His despicable behavior garnered no sympathy from anyone, leading to his isolation at work and eventual resignation. He might be delusional enough to think he can reconcile with me, but of course I have no such intentions. Michelle, you're returning to work soon, right? How's your health? Yes, much better now. I need to work for this little one. That's a dependable mom for you. Unbeknownst to my ex-husband, I sometimes meet Mary with my child. She initially hesitated, saying we're strangers now after the divorce, so I'll keep my distance. But when I told her, you're a lifesaver for me and my child, she happily held my son. Please teach me the ropes as a fellow single mother. Leave it to me. Let's work together as comrades or like detectives who've brought down a villain. Somehow, Mary and I have become more like best friends than in-laws. It's not a bad relationship at all, but sometimes I worry. You're just like your father. Mary's words linger in my mind. Will my child become like his father one day? Do I believe that blood cannot be denied? It's pointless to think about it now. It's decades into the future. But I resolve to teach him that wrong is wrong and to impart the importance of kindness and empathy to everyone. My son is just my son, nothing more, nothing less. As a mother, my only role is to devote my life to raising him. The winter sun, gently piercing the cold sky, seems to be cheering me on.